internet. Would that it were so simple.
No, Matthew. Say it like me. Would that it were so simple.
Would that it were
Would
so
that it
simple.
were so simple.
Would that it were so simple.
No. Trippingly. Would that it were so
Trippingly?
Don't say trippingly. Would that it were.
This is the only podcast about Hail Caesar. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd in a distinctly English accent today.
Yes, of course. And with us, as sometimes, is my lovely girlfriend, Robin Foster.
Hi, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, Robin. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Dragging you out on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
What are we, Matt Kroll? Could you be more romantic?
I am just a
Spend it
charmer.
any other way.
Not only on Valentine's Day. I don't know if you can hear this, dear listener, but I have a little tinge in my throat, so you might hear me popping some cough drops and some whiskey while this thing goes down. My voice is not at 100%.
No, but it sounds so sexily hoarse. Wouldn't you agree, Robin?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? You like it
Always.
this way? I like it this way.
Stop it.
Hey, welcome to the only podcast about movies. Today's movie is going to be
Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar. And just before we get started, I wanted to just remind everyone, if this is the first time you're tuning in, please email us at the onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or on our Twitter handle at onlymoviepod.
I might even say, if this is not your first time as well, you might want to do that. Also, hello, if this is the first time, welcome.
Wow, yeah, good episode to join us on.
Yes, it's a good one.
It's a good one so far.
It's a movie about movies.
Yeah, we like those.
Always my favorite.
So Hail Caesar.
Yes.
Hail Caesar. According to IMDb, a Hollywood fixer in the 1950s works to keep the studio stars in line, which is a very brief description for what is a fairly long, convoluted plotline. But it's also the latest film by the Coen brothers, Ethan and Joel. Are you guys fans?
Yes.
Yeah, I am. I don't. I'm not like. Whenever a movie does come at him, I was like, "Oh, Coen Brothers, I gotta see it." You know? But this one, I was excited about only because when they said it's a Valentine. Speaking of Valentine's Days, to old Hollywood.
Right.
I personally love any movies about old Hollywood.
Right. Okay. How about you, Matt?
I mean, I just like their style in general. And actually, it's not like I go, I'm not like a super fan where I'll go out and hunt down every movie that they've done, but I'm always pleasantly surprised when another one comes out. So I'm like, oh, yeah, like I'll go see that. I thought, overall, if we just want to get into sort of first impressions of this thing, I enjoyed it for the most part. I thought it was clever enough and fun enough, and I had a good time while I was in the
I'm
theater.
sensing a lack of enthusiasm, though.
That also might be my horsey voice.
I like your horsey voice.
I dug it. I think, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but I think it works on a couple different levels, a couple of which I don't even know. But I get that sense that there's more sort of going on than just like this cutesy story about old-time Hollywood. I think the actors in it are great. I think there were some interesting editing choices, which we'll talk about later, from a story editing perspective. But yeah, I definitely dug it. What did you think, Shahir?
Well, just my preamble about every, Coen. I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan, and I was kind of worried about seeing this particular Coen Brothers movie because it's released in February, and to me, the Coen Brothers breaks down, and this is entirely arbitrary, into three different categories of movies, and they are the noir serious films that they do, films like No Country for Old Men, Blood Simple, The Man Who Wasn't There, True Grit, and then they have this sort of and then, like, on the opposite end of the spectrum is their pure silliness films. Things like The Big Lebowski, Hudsucker Proxy, Raising Arizona, Intolerable Cruelty. And then in the middle, they have these kinds of, like, absurdist serious films. Films that are kind of silly but have sort of a message or something going on under the surface. Films like A Serious Man, Barton Fink, I think, could kind of be in either the completely serious, but I think it's so John Goodman in that film is so crazy. And then Burn After Reading and The Lady Killers. And the thing that got me worried about seeing this film in particular is that it's being released in February, which is not like, it's kind of a wasteland for.
Right. Hold on. Let's with that. Do you really think that February is truly the wasteland anymore?
Well, I think for a Coen Brothers film, given that these guys have made, Best Picture winners in the last 5 years, and have been nominated every year. I think for a film of theirs to be to be placed in February kind of indicates something different. And then the last time this happened to them, well, it's probably happened since, a couple of times since then, but it was Intolerable Cruelty with George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones, which I think we'll all universally agree is is pretty bad Coen brothers. It's not a bad movie, but it's not a great movie, and it's pretty bad for them.
Yeah,
I would say their worst film.
It falls into that whole, like, is a Coen's brother movie just sort of better than most movies anyway sort of thing. And granted, I don't think I'd ever watch it again, but
I actually started watching it again, and it's amazing how like off key that film is. It kind of feels like just a misfire on all levels.
I think with going back to the February thing though, I think February is still like half wasteland, half like we have this experiment we want to run and see if it plays. And this is, since there's not really a whole lot of other contenders going on at the time, then it's easier to sort of get weird stuff through. I don't think this movie falls into that.
Yeah.
But I think February, I like that February is kind of becoming like trial and error.
Did Mad Max come out in February, or Mad Max came out like
it was
a little
summertime?
Bit? Was it a little summer?
It was like the earliest summertime.
Yeah. It was pretty early, as I remember. So with that in mind, those categories are kind of just my own arbitrary categories that I've kind of put out there.
But you also forgot kind of their nostalgic pieces.
Like
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I mean, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou to me is a film that sits in there, pure silliness films. You know, Oh Brother, you know, I enjoy that film, but I'd kind of like rank that alongside this, which is that I think this is a great movie and I really enjoy it. And I think
but I would lump that in with like their silliness for sure,
Yeah.
as well as like their just like pay homage to, you know, Americana.
Right,
You know, and this movie for sure, I feel falls into that category with paying homage to Hollywood.
And I think, you know, like the critical mass reviews that are kind of coming out are suggesting that this is a love letter to the studio system for one, and old Hollywood.
So maybe that's why they chose February.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. It feels like, you know, like I think this is a fairly specific kind of film, and it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna speak to a very broad audience. You know,
no, this movie talks to people that likes movies, but not just like going to the movies as escapism. Like they like people that like to learn and hear about the aspect of making movies.
Yeah, which in my mind is, and especially if you populate it with people like George Clooney, with Scarlett Johansson, you know, like Channing Tatum, that might be a little bit misguiding for, you know, anyone just walking in off the street kind of thing.
But I do think, yes, I mean, some of the roles in particular are misguiding depending on how you read the advertising. But but I think that the fact they top loaded it with a bunch of names, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that in itself is kind of like sort of what they did. More so, they still do it now, but like more so back in the day, it would be like a so-and-so picture or whatever.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
to top load this with all those people sort of in a meta way is kind of like doing what the movie talks about movies doing.
And it's fun that each of the actors that they've loaded into those films, like the film goes through the studio system, and then Josh Brolin, Eddie Mannix, is basically trying to like control all the craziness that's happening with his actors, and also one of his actors has just been kidnapped. But the kidnapping of George Clooney's Baird Whitlock is kind of just one of a series of plot lines that are happening concurrently.
Yeah, there's kind of 2.5 plot lines that are going on in this movie.
And what's fun about them though is I think that like casting Channing Tatum as I would see him as sort of in a Gene Kelly role, but I don't think it's quite Gene Kelly. It's someone else that I'm not as familiar with. Is kind of a fun play with that actor. You know, George Clooney as a sort of a himbo actor, you know, like a male pretty face who's in a little bit over his head is kind of fun as well. Scarlett Johansson as the bombshell who is a little bit more rough and tumble than her characters suggest is kind of fun as well. So I think you know, like all Coen brothers films, they have a huge stable of actors, because these are all actors that they've, well, apart from Channing Tatum, are all actors that they've worked with before, and they can, you know, just sort of cycle them in. They probably have one of the biggest sort of library pools of actors that they can draw from. And I never feel like they cast kind of frivolously as well. Like I don't feel like they ever do
frivolously?
Like, yeah, I don't like for example, David O. Russell with Jennifer Lawrence right now, where he's just casting her in everything, you know, like
don't get me started.
It's always, you know, like they always cast wisely, but Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio or Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. I feel like the Coen brothers, they have this big stable of actors and they circle around to the person who's best for the role.
Sure.
And Channing Tatum just happens to fall into all those families now.
Yeah.
He's doing work, man. He's making fucking moves.
Yeah.
And oh boy, does he move those hips. Sorry. So my overall impression is that, again, I enjoyed this film a lot. I laughed out loud, many times, and it kind of tickled my particular funny bone. But I was kind of like in the audience feeling like I might be the only person laughing.
When I was watching it, I was definitely thinking this was your kind of movie.
Yeah.
But Robin, what did you think about the movie?
Yeah, Robin, we haven't heard from you yet. So what was your thoughts?
I personally love this movie because it speaks very personally to myself. I am born and raised in California, suburbs of LA.
Right.
Under
the banners of the studio.
All of it. Yeah, basically. So my grandfather was Harold Hedrick, and his sister Zelma was Zelma Hedrick. He and their other sister, whose name escapes me at the moment, but they all traveled from North Carolina all the way to Los Angeles to make it in pictures.
Oh, wow.
And they all got contracts with MGM.
Yeah.
And his name was changed to Michael Grayson.
Okay.
And his sister was changed to Katherine Grayson.
Okay.
Who wound up becoming a huge musical era movie star. I was actually, one time I was walking down Hollywood and Vine and I found her star.
Oh, wow.
Right outside the Trader Joe's right there on the corner.
Trader Joe's.
I was like, oh, there she is.
And that's your grandmother?
That's my great aunt.
It's your great aunt.
Yes.
So these are some deep cuts. I like to think that I know a lot about Hollywood or old Hollywood, but I really don't.
Yeah. So I had that with my great grandmother. My grandmother's mother was a seamstress in the studios, and
wow.
she made Vanessa Redgrave's wedding dress in Camelot.
Okay.
And she did all the beadwork and everything. And I just have a whole family lineage of people working in the studio system in the era, and actors and
so
singers.
Thanksgiving at your place is like a round table of like people all talking about what movies they just worked on.
No, not necessarily like that. It was, that's like a bygone era now.
Yeah.
But, much like Hollywood, or much like what this film depicts, is like how we gloss over the crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot like my family too. Like there's a lot of crazy behind the curtain.
Sure. In every family, to be fair, there's a lot of crazy.
Right. But a lot of places where Hail Caesar was filmed is where I grew up.
Yeah.
Where they actually filmed the movie Hail Caesar is in Simi Valley, California, which is...
The original or the one that's in this film?
The one that's in this film.
Okay.
Is actually where I grew up.
Yeah.
And the big Western where Hobie was doing his old... Like, that's right by where... Actually, the last time Matt came home with me, I was showing him, and that's right where we were, Matt.
Yep.
Oh,
when
cool.
we drove through that area.
I learned stuff.
So
the song the moment where he's angry at the moon, when he plays that little song, that diddle.
No, when he's doing all the
the roping.
When he's riding the horse, doing all those tricks on the horse and everything, like that's nearby where I grew up. So I recognized all these places, and so I get super excited when I see things that I'm familiar with and what I know of, and so it very much spoke to me.
Right.
And it made me super nostalgic for just where I'm from.
Old-timey Hollywood.
Yeah. Which is, even though I live here in New York now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as a film on its own terms, like, even not speaking directly to you, did you, were you engaged by it? Did you enjoy it?
I was very much engaged for... Did
you laugh?
Yes. I was very much engaged for those reasons.
Yeah.
But for terms of... And when it comes down to the storytelling part of it, I feel like it trailed sometimes, but overall, I still, as a comedy, and like they're silly, sort of
silly Coen brothers.
I felt that they succeeded in what I think they set out to do.
Yeah. I mean, that the scene that we started this episode with, would that it were so simple.
Yep.
I think that was just
that was super fun.
That's an exercise in comedic genius.
Right.
That scene isolated. And I think that, I try to avoid trailers. I went back and watched the trailer, and the trailer is literally just that scene.
Really?
Yeah, they
really?
they played that scene out. And it's possibly one of the best Coen brothers scene in a pretty good Coen brothers film. Not necessarily my favorite Coen brothers film, but a pretty great one.
Yeah.
Is how I would describe it. But do you guys want to get into spoilers? Do you want to get into the meat? There's a big elephant in the room question mark around this film that I think we're going to get into in 3, 2, 1.
Why you gotta be so dramatic?
Spoiler.
Hey, we need a button. That's what it's gonna sound like. Yeah. So this story is, like we said in the beginning, sort of it's like 2.5 stories, sort of. But Eddie Maddox, who is played by Josh Brolin, is the head of Capitol Pictures.
Yeah, Capitol Pictures. Yeah,
and they
appropriately titled Capitol Pictures.
Right.
Yeah.
So he is basically the man that makes sure that everything sort of happens. He wrangles his talent. He makes sure things are going on time. He's sort of like the fix-it man for this giant industrial thing of just making sort of what even the movie calls at one point sort of like Hollywood schlock, like this feel-goody, no real point, but like real sort of fun and like, the going to see the pictures, like very, very innocent sort of films.
But he's which is true, but he's also in charge of dealing with Hollywood egos.
Yes,
and
well, that's what I meant.
Yeah, and he kind of has to like deal with like any ordinary businessman wouldn't have to deal with like an employee getting pregnant and trying to find out what to do with it.
That's what I was referencing. He's a fixer. So he goes into situations and he has to deal with the talent. He has to deal with negotiations. He has to deal with everything in these weird sort of situations. He has to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Yeah.
And there's a subplot in this movie about Lockheed trying to hire him away from the studio thing, and it's kind of like he's torn back and forth. Like, yeah, my life is crazy and my hours are shit, but do I actually love this enough to stay working in pictures?
Right.
Or do I want to take the cushy job where I can retire after 10 years and be with my family?
And Lockheed kind of always make the point to him is like, you'll be building real things. This is real work.
Yes.
Like what you do in Hollywood, it's fun, it's cute, but this is real work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So he has to deal with all these wacky characters. And something that really struck me was, and Josh Brolin's great in the film, and I liked the character, but I was always, in the back of my head, I was thinking like, man, if this was a real sort of thing that happened, and it was.
Eddie Maddox is based on a real character, a real person. Yeah.
But apparently the real person is not as nice and as wholesome and as every Joe everybody sort of as this person is. So what struck me was that since he was like so like, I'll just fix everything and I'm the hardworking sort of, he struck me as like the quintessential hardworking American man.
Well, he does. I mean, he opens the film with slapping around one of his female female stars. Right.
But he just sort of strikes me as this like, I don't know, like he struck me as too average Joe to be in charge of this giant thing. And I guess the same character, and I'm not familiar with it, but the movie Hollywoodland.
Oh, the one with Ben Affleck?
Yeah.
Apparently the same character is portrayed in that movie.
Oh, really?
By a different guy, but under a different name. I wrote it down somewhere.
I haven't seen Hollywoodland, but that's the one where Ben Affleck plays Superman, right?
Bob Hoskins.
Oh, okay.
It plays a more true to the real life version of this guy who's kind of a dick.
Oh, and his name would have been Eddie, just like it was in Roger Rabbit too. Please, Eddie.
Well, there you go. I mean,
there you go.
Conspiracy. Anyway, so that kind of struck me. It was just very strange. But then I realized as the movie sort of went on, even the despicable characters are likable.
Very.
In this movie, so like it bothered me less and less as it went.
Yeah, I think if you start breaking down this film and thinking about what it's actually saying, it becomes a kind of murky film to get into, because on the one hand it's showing the frivolity and the kind of emptiness of Hollywood, but on the other hand it's kind of a love letter to Hollywood as well. And there's an interesting plot point that happens, which is that Baird Whitlock, played by George Clooney, gets kidnapped. It's kind of the catalyst for the whole film. And he gets kidnapped by a group of Hollywood screenwriters who are very openly communist. And they're fighting. They're basically rallying against the way in which the studios organize itself as a capitalist industry that doesn't support their work. And like if like the fact that the studio is called Capitol Pictures, and then that they're this communist group of writers, which is like interesting into itself, given we're in an election year, but then at the same time, the ending, which I think is the thing we're all going to get into, is kind of a pleasant ending for the studio, or kind of a like, studio's A-okay, like, which is weird because it like it seems, I don't know how much the Coen brothers can take a dig at studios, given that they've made so many films under studios, like it seems conflicting to me. I don't know. How did you guys feel? I mean, like, how did you negotiate this kind of like the philosophical ideas that were going on underneath the comedy?
Yeah, I feel like it really conflicted a lot. Like, I think the ending was a very Hollywood ending.
Yeah.
Like, it ends how every Hollywood movie should end.
Yeah.
But if you're really going to dive into the studio system and make digs at it, then go all the way.
Right.
But if you're
kind of like The Player or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But so that's where I feel like it really strayed.
Right. To me, it was I guess the thing that was interesting, and the reason why I'm kind of like, this might be my version of a Marvel film where I can forgive its flaws. Maybe. Is that the ending to, like, there's another through line through this film, which is about religion and in the way in which theology plays a role in everyone's lives. At one point they bring in a rabbi, a priest, and a clergyman.
Great scene.
Great scene.
Let me set that up real quick. So basically what happens is they bring in all three of these religious men, four, into a room with Eddie Maddox to discuss the characterization of Jesus Christ in their newest picture, Hail Caesar, which is about George Clooney's actor character playing a centurion who finds Christ and sees him, and it's a whole thingamaroll. Yeah. So they want to make sure that no one's going to be offended in any of the quote major religions in America at that point of the portrayal of Jesus Christ.
And everyone is conflicted. Like, nobody in that room can actually even agree on what Jesus Christ sounds,
let alone
excellent.
What they should look like.
Yeah, what they should look like. So, and then, like, Eddie Maddox is continually visiting a priest for confession. And it's been the movie starts with him like, how long has it been since your last confession? 27 hours. And he's basically confessing against the fact that he's been smoking too many cigarettes. But the thing that I found interesting, and maybe that spoke to me directly, is that from a religious, and we got into this with Spotlight as well. I'm not a religious person at all, but I was trying to think of like, what are my most religious experiences? And, like experiences that really touched my soul, kind of thing. And they all come from the movies, and it's funny because like one of my favorite, I don't know what it is, but one of my favorite things to do is to watch a movie on a Sunday morning. And I feel like I'm more emotionally receptive to like what's happening in a movie if I watch it on a Sunday morning.
You're going to church.
And it's exactly right.
That's hilarious.
Me going to church is watching a movie on a Sunday morning.
It's your sanctuary.
It's my sanctuary. So when the film ends with a kind of escalating, like ascending shot above the studios, and we see the classic Warner Brothers water tower in the distance, and the wording on it says "Behold," and then we kind of flash off into the sky in a sort of celestial light, directed by Joel and Ethan Coen.
Right.
And as much as I think that is a oddly problematic moment in the film, it kind of worked for me because it affirmed my, what I love about films. And I think what Eddie Maddox was kind of trying to get at by the end of the film, which is that it's not real work, but it's the work we love.
Yeah, and I think that really was portrayed when he, in the middle of the night, went on set to the Three Crosses.
Yeah.
And he just stood there, and I think that's where he found his refuge and his realization.
Yeah. But it's weird because I don't know if he likes movies. Like, I wasn't sure if I got the impression that Eddie Maddox himself, like he didn't seem like the kind of guy that actually watches a lot of movies. He just seems like the guy who knows how to like get things done.
The character was more concerned about his people.
Yeah.
The character was more concerned about making sure the studio as a business and its employees were taken care of.
Well, no, I mean, you saw him watching dailies.
Sure.
in like what 2 scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he thoroughly cared about.
I read it more of as he cared about his company's product.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If he actually like loved the movies itself. He was just a great sort of executive in any sense that sort of wanted everything to run as smoothly as possible so that everyone could keep doing the best work that they were doing.
Because he loves actually working in the movies. That's what
I think he loves working in the movies, but yeah, like the way, and to me, one of the most telling scenes is when he's talking to Scarlett Johansson's character.
Right.
And he kind of just refers to the movies that they're making as good money earners for the studio. Like he's pretty dismissive of what they actually are. So I think I read it the same way, which is that rather than enjoying what he was watching, he was more doing QC, quality control over what was being produced that day.
Because I don't remember, and I don't know if there was a scene or not of this. Maybe there was, Robin. If there was, correct me. But whenever they're talking about Hail Caesar, he doesn't go on to talk about it like he actually loves it. He just brings up the fact that it's the biggest one and it's going to be great. He gives a lot of lines towards like, oh, it's going to be wonderful. It's but it all feels very like businessman pitchy to me. And again, I'm not saying he dislikes anything he's making. I think he believes in the product, but I think he thinks of it more of a product and less of the way sort of Shahir even talked about seeing movies as sort of like a religious or an important experience. He's like, this is escapism. My product is escapism. I want to make sure I deliver the best escapism as possible. I don't know because I never had that moment of when he would like watch something or be looking at something or be around and just be like, it was always about the
misty-eyed or yelling.
He only ever got misty-eyed and it only happened like, I wouldn't even say misty-eyed, but like seemed like he really enjoyed himself when he was solving the problems of the people he was working with. Like it seemed like he got joy out of fixing and wrangling these cats that were these crazy actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a reason why, we all work in the entertainment industry and we all kind of found our niche or what we like to do in it. And there's many different avenues, like he might have gotten into it. I mean, who knows? He might have gotten into it initially just because he likes movies. And then he found out what he's actually good at and what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be speaking too deep into it or maybe thinking too deeply about it, but.
No, I think that's true for anyone who gets into the business. Like the thing that I'm always surprised by when because to me, like loving the movies is such an important part of the reason why I do the things I do. But then I meet a lot of people who are in the same business who don't love the movies or, don't watch a lot of movies or don't talk about,
no.
And that always strikes me a lot. But then I have to like check myself a little bit and realize that everyone has different capacities or different abilities that don't necessarily like that are perfectly suited to this business, but aren't necessarily about loving the movies. They're just good organizers, they're good managers, they're good technicians, they're good, not necessarily creatives, but and I feel that's what Eddie Mannix's, role is in this, is that he's not, I think I feel like, and there's nothing to suggest this in the film, that he's neither here nor there about Hail Caesar doing well as much as one of his what is it the actress's name that Scarlett Johansson's character is kind
Esther Williams?
Esther Williams,
yes.
yeah.
It's supposed to be who she was, or
is that who she was, or who she was kind of modeled on?
She's supposed to be modeled after Esther Williams, which is interesting too because
Deanna Moran was her name in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, and just just those scenes and those like that was very much a Busby Berkeley.
Yeah, I was thinking
film,
of Busby Berkeley, but then
and that's way beyond that's not 1950s. That's much earlier.
Yeah, and it's weird because I've actually just been watching a lot of Busby Berkeley for a project that I'm working on, and Busby Berkeley. If anyone hasn't seen a Busby Berkeley musical, choreographed musical, they would blow your mind today. And the thing was, when I saw, when I saw that overhead shot, I was like, oh, cool. The Coen brothers are doing Busby Berkeley right now. And then it was kind of like not as cool and not as like choreographed. But then I think that's more of a reference to Esther Williams musicals, which are slightly more run-of-the-mill kind of synchronized swimming.
Yeah,
I was going to say, one of my only critiques of this movie that threw me out of the experience whenever it happened was whenever they used CG to do something in this movie, it really threw me off. And I don't know if it was just the style in which they were trying to do it or whatever, but like that scene where Scarlett Johansson is doing the basically water choreography thing they're shooting that movie.
Yeah.
When like the water spurts up and then like she comes up out of the thing and like all that stuff, like that was all, like a lot of that was CG'd.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself the entire time, like, why don't they just do it?
Yeah, given that Busby Berkeley could do it so long ago.
Yeah, like why not just do it. Like, and maybe there's contractual things. Maybe ScarJo didn't want to get into a giant tank forever, and maybe, but I don't know. Like, it just,
who knows?
That felt to me like after everything was like, oh, I'm transported into this magical world of old time Hollywood, and then that hits, and I was like, oh.
And I guess maybe the thing is that it doesn't feel like old time Hollywood as much as it feels like old time B movie Hollywood. You know, like not.
Well, that's the studio system too.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the whole point of it. It's just like so many movies are being cranked out during that era. It's just it almost becomes like it's just a machine, and that's all it becomes to him.
Yeah. And it's, you know what, the thing that I did genuinely enjoy was the fact that you got to see the Coen brothers kind of riffing on so many different genres of studio filmmaking and stuff and genres that they themselves have actually played in a modern context. You know, so for example, the character, what is his name? Hobie Doyle. Hobie Doyle's character.
Played by Aldrin
Ehrenreich, who, by the way, just walks away with this movie.
Show.
He's the best.
He's completely,
the best.
He's going to be a huge star off the back of this movie.
It was so good.
He is.
He basically plays a cowboy, like a Western actor that's just mainly there because he's an actual cowboy and can do all the tricks and the lasso and the hoops and the shooting and everything. And then some mandate, they want to move him up. They want to change his brand.
Yeah.
And so they're going to put him in a very high-end sort of, what would you call that sort of piece?
I don't know. It's not a Preston Sturges film, but kind of like a...
like a Pride and Prejudice sort of like...
Yeah, something along those lines.
Like a very hoity-toity sort of film. They want to make him into a leading romantic man.
Yeah.
And the act thing that Shahir and I did as a part of the movie in the beginning is part of the thing where the director, who is played by...
Ray
Fiennes.
Lawrence Lawrence.
Yeah. Lawrence. Yeah.
They're working together, and obviously Lawrence doesn't want anything to do with Hobie at all.
Well, because Hobie's terrible in this context, but he is. But the actor, the meta commentary is the actor that plays him in this film is so versatile. Alden Ehrenreich, you know, and like he can jump. He gets tasked with the most to do in this movie.
Oh yeah,
right,
and he is so good.
And he can play a bad actor so well.
Oh yeah,
it was wonderful.
But I guess, you know, what was fun was that, you know, the guys who did True Grit, you know, the remake of True Grit, are kind of doing like a hokey studio western in this film as well. Yes. And, you know, the Angry to the Moon, what was he, Angry at the Moon?
Lazy Old Moon.
The Lazy Old Moon. It was so good, you know, like, and it was like, I could just kind of imagine them. I could imagine every single one of those little vignettes where they show like a studio film, the Coen brothers doing an entire film like that.
And even beyond that, I'll take Hobie Doyle. If this movie was all about Hobie Doyle's journey from being a cowboy actor to being a leading man, I would have eaten that. If that was the whole thing, and because I loved what you keep bringing up when he was doing the lasso tricks, waiting for his basically his assigned date, who was another actress. He wanted to be seen at a premiere with. And then even their date was really cute. And I know he noticed certain things happen and moved the plot along that way. But I could have watched. You could have watched him. You could have written the whole thing about him, and I would have been like, all right.
In fact, I wonder if that would have made a more universal experience if that was the case.
Because I think it would have been sort of, even though he would have been a Hollywood actor, he still would have kind of played the everyman, whereas Josh Brolin's character, while he was in personality sort of the very everyman, at the end of the day, it's a story about a boss trying to control his company.
Right.
Trying to make sure his company's doing well. So
and then one of the interesting things that's happened, and this is kind of in the realm of Coen Brothers territory as well, is that he comes to the realization, you know, Josh Brolin's character, Eddie Mannix, comes to the realization that he can't, some things will just work themselves out. He even says that line when he's talking about his daughter's, his son's baseball game.
Oh, right.
And that's actually what happens in the film, which is that he kind of takes a step back and things just work out without his influence.
Because the main thing, and I feel like we haven't even talked about it much at all, is George Clooney's character gets kidnapped off the set of Hail Caesar by communists. And is brought to this mansion to sort of kind of hold him ransom, I guess. And
but in the most fun possible way with cucumber sandwiches.
Yeah, you know? These were very nice communists. And George Clooney's character is basically sort of a leading man, but kind of a doof. Not a doof.
Not a doof, but easily manipulable.
Sure.
Manipulatable.
Manipulated.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, past tense.
And I really did like George Clooney's portrayal of this sort of dude. It was very, very fun.
He commonly plays kind of the doofus in Coen Brother movies. You know, this is
Oh
his
Brother, We're Out There.
Yeah.
He makes a good doofus. You
Yeah.
know, like he has a lot of fun as a doofus.
Oh, side note: the two Romans actors, extras that kidnap him.
Hello,
one is
Newman.
One is Newman Wayne Knight. The other one, I got to give a shout out to my man Vork. He is his name's not actually Vork. He played Vork in the Guild, Felicia Day's Warcraft series that she sort of did online. But I love to see him get work. He's fucking great and hilarious and everything.
There was another one of the communist writers was like I didn't know who he was. I didn't recognize him immediately, but when I saw him, he was in Mulholland Drive. He was the guy describing the nightmare to another character. And then he was like in this movie, he's like the same. He looks exactly the same, but he's all got gray hair. And I was like, Jesus, Mulholland Drive was like 15 years ago, and it's the same guy. And yeah, it was cool. I mean, how did you feel about the communist kind of storyline?
Side note: Jeff Lewis is the guy who played Vork, who played across Wayne Knight. I just love him. He's so fucking funny in everything he does. So I'm glad. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna talk about more spoiler alerts, so like when funny story. So like my grandfather was in the studio system. He was actually really good friends with Ronald Reagan.
Right. Oh.
And so one day, Mr. Reagan goes to my grandfather, and this is all word of mouth. Like my grandfather passed before I was born, and my mother told me the story.
Right.
But Ronald Reagan turned to my grandfather. He's like, "Hey, do you want to go to this meeting with me tonight?"
Oh.
And
Reagan flirted with communism?
It was a meeting with communist ties. And
I think we've got an exclusive here.
Yeah.
I think.
And so apparently my grandfather turned and was like, "What the hell are you thinking? Like, what's going on? Like, this is during the studio era. You know, this is a big no-no."
Yeah.
And he was just like, "Oh," apparently he appeared clueless to it. He's just like, "Oh, I didn't know. I just thought it'd be interesting." You know, something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything that happened beyond that, but my mom just told me that one day. And I was like, "What?"
Boy, that is given the current political elections where every Republican is touting Reagan as like.
This is before Nancy. This was way before Nancy.
Right.
But that part of the movie really threw me off because I just I didn't care much for this kidnapping. I wanted to, every time Hobie was on screen, I wanted to know more about that. Like you said, Matt, I think that if you saw him transition from spaghetti westerns to leading man, I think that would have been
totally different movie, but better.
But really interesting.
Yeah. And maybe more like falls into the pitfalls of like Hollywood. I think that would have been a more interesting story to follow. But when it comes to this whole communism thing, I just, anytime that came on screen, I kind of tuned out, or I just wasn't as interested.
Right. So because the thing that's, we talked about when we did Sicario earlier this year, we talked a little bit about Sicario in comparison to No Country for Old Men. And this is going a little bit of a deep cut for the only podcast about movies. But I think the thing was that we, like Steve and I were talking about the fact that how is it the Coen brothers could do a film like No Country where the main character gets completely sidetracked for another character and Sicario can't quite pull it off. And it's the same. There's something in this film as well, which is that the Coen brothers could write a film where the most interesting character is not the lead character and a whole plot point comes across that almost is coincidental to the film and resolves without any incidents, any influence by the main characters. And I still found it pretty compelling and pretty interesting. I think they just have the ability to spot the lightning rod, like to spot in every scene what is the most interesting thing and how can I write this in the most interesting way. To me, like that. So while I agree that like on a purely narrative level, those scenes were probably the least interesting. Yeah. I still found them pretty compelling, and I still was like, "Oh, where is this going to go?" And when they did resolve, I was still kind of satisfied by the way they resolved.
I did enjoy the resolution just because it just
Channing Tatum on a submarine kind of did it for you.
It just made it. Well, I mean, it just like contributed more to the silliness of it all.
Yeah,
just the ridiculous, the dog jumping in his arms and they lose all the money.
Yeah.
And
even before that, basically what occurs is the communists now have George Clooney and they're asking for so much money, and Josh
didn't seem like a lot of money to me, by the way.
Back then,
it was like $100,000. I was like, and like even the studio, he had kind of like can you give me $100,000 in petty cash? And he's like, yeah,
of course. So he gets it, and the briefcase is too small. That's always a joke. So it's wrapped up with the belt, and he has to deliver it and leave it behind a thing in a studio, in a studio block, like studio whatever,
where we see
Channing Tatum do his dance, which
better than Magic Mike.
Yeah.
He danced better than Magic Mike this time around. I was annoyed that Chevalier didn't come see it. I was like, I think she would have found this more arousing.
No dames. No dames. Totally not homoerotic in any way, shape, or form.
No dames.
But it was very good song and dance number. Channing Tatum's proving himself to be the man when it comes to any sort of dance / comedy /
I think he's the John Travolta of our era.
And that's very true.
Yeah.
And he eventually, you find out later, thanks to finding out Hobie actually sees the briefcase. He recognizes it because he saw it in Josh Brolin's office. Channing Tatum is at dinner right after the movie premiere of Hobie's movie. He sees the briefcase. He puts 2 and 2 together, and Hobie trails Channing Tatum back to the communist lair where he rescues... kind of rescues.
Yeah, it's sort of it's very
George
low
Clooney.
momentum kind of scene.
And then Channing Tatum, as the communist leader, gets onto a boat and has a very George Washington moment across the water with the dog, and a submarine comes up and takes him away. And that's where Robin was saying the money gets dropped and the dog gets saved and all that jazz.
And all that jazz.
Now, it was all super cool, and I liked it, and I enjoyed it. And I think there's something to be said about the Coen brothers that they could have a movie where there's just like a lot of happenstance to it, but I still don't care. Like, I'm like, oh, this is fun enough where I'm not going to tear this thing apart. Like,
it also feels purposeful. Like, I feel like it's like telling the story that they want to tell. It never feels like they're kind of not. It never feels like they don't know what they're doing.
It's never a thing of convenience. It never feels like they're like, oh fuck, we need this guy to come here like that.
Yeah.
That I totally agree with. And it has to do with their writing and directing style. Otherwise, I don't know how else I'd be able to sort of stomach it. But you do, and you like it.
Yeah, to what Matt was saying earlier, it's very purposeful. Like I keep talking about the lasso scene when he's waiting for his date to arrive. You know, it's just,
that's a great scene, and it has nothing to do with the film.
No, but you know, I think it's trying to say, you know, look at how the system that was built back then and how it can attract that kind of talent.
Yeah.
Where who can do that nowadays? Where you can you can
Channing Tatum can can sing his dance his way onto a studio lot, I'm sure.
Which is wonderful, but I just don't think our system today can provide for that.
Right, and this is an era when the independent film movement, while was happening, was not attracting audiences. So the studios were kind of like the only game in town. So it's interesting, you know, like the thing about that the communist story is that it ties really well into this kind of meta critique of the capitalist system that the studios operate under, and it even though it kind of sort of just resolves itself without much incidents and kind of meanders around the point, it left me thinking, you know, there's a lot of meat on them bones kind of thing. There's a lot to chew on.
Well, that's something I want to talk about because, like I said in the beginning of this movie can be enjoyed on a couple different levels. You can see it all flash and you know, sort of surface stuff, and you have fun. And then there seems to be a ton of undercurrent. Like when I left the movie, I thought to myself, I'm like, this movie is way deeper than I understand it.
Right.
And I still don't.
Right.
Like,
I don't think a lot of people do.
And I'm wondering if there actually is a true message behind all, especially the communism stuff and like all this, like, and the religious overtones and all this stuff. Like, it's almost like if this movie was like a meal or like a shepherd's pie or any kind of pie, just something you put a lot of ingredients into. This movie's a pie.
Yeah.
Like
a stew perhaps. You could. It's just very hard to. There's a ton of flavors mixed in, and you need them all there to make the thing at the end result. But to pick them out is so difficult. At least for me, like. I watch a lot of movies, and I think way too much about a lot of movies, and I thought a lot about this one, and I still can't pick apart if there are what the specific undertones are. I know they're there, unless I'm crazy, and they made it this way to make people think that they should be something picked apart.
Well, I think, like, so the last few Coen, like, and I think all of these films are masterpieces. I don't think Hail Caesar is kind of on the same level as Inside Llewyn Davis, A Serious Man, and True Grit is the most simplistic of this last bunch. But starting with the thing that I was always amazed by with No Country, it went No Country for Old Men, A Serious Man, True Grit, Those three films were kind of all came out in a row, and to me were all masterworks. Inside Llewyn Davis followed them. And the thing is immediately after No Country for Old Men, I was like, I'm not sure I quite get what they're trying to say about Anton Chigurh and the role of fate and destiny in this film, but I really like what they did here, and I really am thinking about this a lot, and I'm really trying to dissect this. And the more I kind of watch that film, I've seen it a couple of times since, I kind of really find threads that I think are true, but then also can pick apart anything I think. It's the same with Inside Llewyn Davis, which has this Inside. Have you guys either of you seen?
I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah, you know the end spoiler for Inside Llewyn Davis. Ending.
Oh no!
The ending of Inside Llewyn Davis does this like really strange time jump that folds back on itself, and I still to this day am not exactly sure what that does.
Yeah.
But I kind of have a feeling about it that works for me. And it's the same with this film, which is that, again, you know, like I kind of have a response to the way the film ends with the behold sign and the kind of the wrapping up of the religious undertones to, you know, basically to me, the film is about communism versus capitalism as a structure by which we live our lives. And the film basically posits the notion that capitalism doesn't work for everyone, but what Eddie Mannix basically comes to a conclusion at the end is that, yes, it doesn't work for everyone, but it actually works for everyone here, and it's the system we have, and it can, you know, it supports us well. So it's not perfect, but it supports us well. Now, that's my reading of the film. I'm not necessarily saying that is the reading of the film.
Right.
But what I love about the Coen brothers movies, and particularly all those films that I've just mentioned, is that they're so, you know, like to use your stew analogy, is that it's kind of like a potato in that stew. If you take it out, it's not that great. But a potato in that particular stew is the most delicious potato possible.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why this film kind of works for me, but I don't necessarily know if it will necessarily work for everyone. And it's not quite as thought-provoking as A Serious Man or Inside Llewyn Davis
but do you think that it was Eddie Mannix's decision to make capitalism versus communism? And like, if that was the case, then he was the one that should have been kidnapped.
I'm not necessarily sure that he was making the decision. I guess I'm saying that the film was coming to the conclusion that this is the system that works for those characters. Okay. You know, like, again, we're in an election year, so I kind of, you know, I watch the debates every night, and the conversation that's going on right now, particularly on the Democratic side, is democratic socialism versus pure capitalism, which is what's happening on the Republican side. And I think what's happening is that we're having this critique of the American political and economic system, which is that capitalism, pure capitalism, is kind of not completely functional for everyone.
No.
You know, but at the same time, you know, I think any political realist would have to argue that there's no way that you could completely reverse the American political and economic spectrum to be something more, you know, pure socialist. So it's kind of like, you know, like we're having this conversation about capitalism. And I think this film, if you were to suggest in any way that it, you know, like it's working on that level, is making some kind of critique about the way in which capitalism operates.
Okay.
I'm almost at a loss for this. I feel like a lot of times I when we're reviewing any movie, I have a really strong sort of like point of view, and I'm really like, this is because of this, and this, I think this, that, and the other thing. And with this one, I wasn't left with sort of as strong of a conviction about any of my opinions, which is hard for me to admit, and like I came into this review being like, what are my points? Like, and I can tell you right now, one point I have is I think there was a little bit of a story editing problem with Scarlett Johansson and Jonah Hill's character. Why the fuck is Jonah Hill on the poster?
Is he on the poster?
He's in it for one scene.
Yeah, probably like 2 minutes of screen time.
I'm wondering,
but I really enjoyed his 2 minutes.
No, it was great. But I'm wondering if like that sort of story, the ScarJo, she's only in 2 scenes and he's in one of them. And I'm like, those scenes are completely arbitrary. They're enjoyable, but they're arbitrary. It's just sort of piling more shit onto Maddox's plate.
Well, okay, no, sorry.
I guess my point is, I I didn't have, other than sort of feeling like I wanted more, I kind of wondered why more, like we didn't have more of those characters. Like, I just didn't have a strong, like, I believe this is about this sort of thing. I just had moments where I was like, that's hilarious that the woman who's editing the film got her scarf caught in the machine.
Frances McDormand plays an editor.
Yeah. And she's almost choked herself. Or I loved, what's her name? The one who plays the twins.
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton's twins. That was such a fun side or B or C story to the whole thing. They played gossip columnists that wanted to like get the stories, and Maddox promised
Where Eagles Dare.
Where Eagles Dare. Yeah. Yeah, that was supposed to be like his flop or something. I don't.
They were talking about how he got the role.
Oh yeah. So I just wish. I wish this movie left me with a stronger conviction. It left me like I had a really great time, but I can't argue really one point or another. And maybe that's the point. I don't know. Like I just feel it's hard for me who bases a lot of my persona personally and professionally on having strong opinions.
Wait, you're telling me it's a persona? This isn't the real you?
This is the man behind the curtain. No, but like just, in public who you are versus who you are in private, all that thing. Like every part of me normally is based on having a really strong opinion about a thing. And I try to be well versed and at least educated enough to formulate that opinion. This, I'm like, I liked it.
Yeah.
And on the high note, I don't know. So it could be any of the things that we've talked about. For me, I feel like I have the least to bring to this conversation. I'm very sorry.
No, but I think that's what you're saying is actually a really good point about the film, which is that if you're not fully engaged, you can kind of, like it's kind of like The Simpsons in a way, it's just like you can watch it on that surface level. If you're really into it, there's a lot of layers to this film.
Yep.
But it never it never feels wishy-washy to me. Like
No.
it feels purposeful, and it left me with enough to like continue the conversation. And what's great about the Coen brothers films is they're always repeatable. Like I always feel like, oh, I could watch that again right now.
If this came on HBO Go or anything like that, I would throw it on because it's a good watch.
Yeah.
Like, I have nothing bad to say.
Well, I mean, okay, so for the Scarlett Johansson character, I mean, that was based on the actress Loretta Young, and that whole scandal like actually happened. So I think the purpose of that was almost just to portray like something that actually happened in yesteryear.
Sure. Like I was saying, like it's more stuff for Maddox to deal with.
Right.
But I think it's the resolution of that story ties directly into Maddox's personal revelation in the film.
Oh, true.
Which is that it just took care of itself.
Because he took care of it. He made it so it seemed like the lawyer played by Jonah Hill would adopt this baby, and then
but it turns out that they fell in love.
But then they fell in love, just like it just so happened that Hobie had seen the briefcase that then led him to go rescue George Clooney from the communists, and then come back, and everything was fine. Yeah, Is it a Bob Marley song? Is that the moral of the story, that everything's going to be all right?
No, I think though, like you watched it and enjoyed it, and that's fine. And now you're kind of seeing another reading of that, and it kind of it's enriching. It might not necessarily work for you, but it's like there's layers to this onion that kind of you can peel back and enjoy. I feel there are many movies you can watch where the further you dig into them, the hollower they become.
're now putting onions in this pie stew.
This stew is
full of onions and potatoes.
Valentine's Day pie
stew,
shepherd's pie stew.
Yeah.
Sounds disgusting.
We'll put the recipe on the website.
But one thing I really want to I'm still grappling with is are the religious undertones and like what the Coen brothers are trying to say about religion in that era or their own personal grapples, because they always have a lot of religious undertones in their films.
They certainly like to deal with the notion of evil like very directly. The Anton Chigurh, the bad guy from Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
But this one didn't have too much evil in it anywhere, really.
No, but it has but what I mean by those things is that I think that they aren't shy about injecting this idea of fate and destiny, and basically the mechanisms by which the world turns into their films. And I think and I think part of that comes through in their discussions about religion and evil and good and evil.
Right.
Like in Barton Fink, John Goodman's character essentially becomes the devil towards the end of the film.
Yeah.
I can't remember his line, and as he's running. Oh, the life of this is the life of the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, I'll show you the life of the mind.
Yeah, I'll show you the life of the mind.
Yeah.
I freaking love Barton Fink.
Yeah.
So I but I at the same time, I don't think that they're particularly devout religious people.
They grew up Jewish.
Right, they grew up Jewish, but their religious philosophy in their film seems to be based on Catholicism. In my reading, my very limited knowledge of Judaism,
right?
It seems to be more, well, except for a film like A Serious Man, which is very Jewish.
Very, very Jewish.
Everything that they seem to deal with is, like even that round table where they have the rabbi, the priest.
Love that scene.
Like it feels like the Judaish perspective is not as heavily referenced as a, I don't know, maybe.
I feel like it's poking fun at Christianity in that way, because if you think about it, the rabbi had the most barbs.
Right,
he stole the scene.
I love his line where it was like, well, what do you think about Jesus Christ in the movie? I think it's unrealistic that he would jump from chariot to chariot.
And I love the fact that all these holy men are giving studio notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, the rabbi was played by the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager. What was his name? Oh, Robert Picardo. Love that guy too.
Well, I think also, Robin, you wanted to kind of just finish up this religious idea that's running through this film, right?
I mean, I think my favorite scene in this movie was when I think it was like the AD or the assistant director was walking around on set, and it was the day of the crucifixion.
Yeah.
And you never see this actor. You never see his face. Yeah, you never see the Jesus guy. But then he walks up and he goes, "So are you an extra or are you an actor?" And he goes, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, did you have a hot meal or did you have a cold meal?" And then he leaves. And then you're seeing George Clooney's massive speech, and everyone is getting so emotional. And I'm waiting for that moment.
Reveal, yeah.
And
I was waiting for that as well.
Waiting for that cameo. I'm like, who's going to be God? Who's going to be Jesus here? And you never see him.
Well, I think because they build it up as well in that way, and then George Clooney fucks up the line.
Yeah.
And it kind of like it's the way in which they kind of like tease you into the presence, like tease you to say that this is going to be a film about the presence of God or something like that, or the presence of the divine. And then it's like, we don't know.
Yeah. And it's just so funny how much in that way, it's just movies themselves, we're talking about community, your sanctuary, your religion.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just a money machine.
Oh, yeah.
And we're just, everyone's there just to make a buck.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the fusion between religion, capitalism,
right?
And the way of life is kind of all mixed into the meld there, and that's kind of where I got the my feeling about the ending as well. I don't
meet the new boss.
Yeah, it's
same as the old boss.
Did you have any other final thoughts, Robin, before we moved on?
I mean, the more, we discussed it and everything, I thoroughly enjoyed it, walking away. And the more I think about it, it's like, yeah, there were a lot of holes to poke, but if I'd watch it again, absolutely, it's not one I'm going to seriously think about to come, but it's always going to be there as some, one of their sillier films that I can just have in the background.
Yeah. Shahir?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will watch it again. I think it's definitely slightly lesser Coen Brothers, than compared to things like A Serious Man, Inside Llewyn Davis, True Grit. It's not even as silly as something like Raising Arizona or A Brother, Where Art Thou? But it's still, even a lesser Coen Brothers films is still a pretty great meal, in my opinion. One curious thing is and I think this worked, is that even though it's shot by Roger Deakins, one of the great cinematographers of our time, it looks and feels very flat, but that kind of works with the studio kind of studio system films that it's kind of playing in. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I will revisit this film definitely one more time, at least once more.
And again, other than my tiny gripes of the special effects, there's any CG sort of throwing me out and feeling like ScarJo and Jonah Hill's sort of arc. I wouldn't even call it an arc. That was my 0.5% of my 2.5 plots going on or whatever. Other than wanting to see more of that, I think it's a super fun movie. I think anyone who likes movies and the act of making movies, or at least the idea of the act of making movies, will really enjoy it. There's a lot to like. Most every character has a wonderful moment. Even speaking or no, like some of them just are these sort of silent, cool moments. And you can dig deep if you want to, or you can stay surface if you want to. And I really appreciate the Coens giving us the option. Anyway, so this was the only podcast about Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar.
Before we finish up, Shahir, you wanted to touch on some emails.
Yeah, we've just been receiving some emails from a few readers, and I just wanted to shout out to James Allen, who I believe is the guy who won the movie tickets from us. So our first fan, and our still devoted fan. We enjoy reading your emails, and this is going to go back into our Spotlight review, Matt. So I'm just going to read that.
Good. I'm totally in fighting shape
just not to bring up old wounds, but if anyone wants to go back, our Spotlight review got fairly heated between Matt, myself, and Gerard in a good way.
It was my favorite.
Really?
It was my absolute favorite.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed that debate a lot. James writes in, and I'm just going to enjoy this email a little bit more. Wow, I was pretty surprised to hear Matt and Gerard rip Spotlight as they did. I found the movie pretty compelling and enjoyed the restrained style. Matt and Gerard seem to be calling for a movie to fit more within a traditional Hollywood style with overt bad guys and more plot machinations. But I think part of the movie's point is the nuance of these situations and how terrible things can happen, even when people aren't necessarily evil or bad, and how easy it is to get caught up in the structures and forces of society. To me, that seems more truthful and insightful about real life. Maybe Matt and Gerard would say there wasn't enough of that in the movie, but that seemed to me be prevalent, at least in the subtext of much of the film. That being said, Matt and Gerard raised some interesting points, and it made for a lively debate. I look forward to watching the movie again and reassessing that. And I wanted to, this is Shahir talking now, I wanted to stress as well that Matt and Gerard's points actually made me rethink about that movie, rewatching it as well. And I can't actually fault any of the logic of anything they said. It is, if you're not into it, a dull film.
Well, James, you said his name was, right? James, I think what that email says to me is, and again, this is based off my opinion, reacting to the email with a head full of phlegm because I'm very sick. So please just take this as you will. James's email to me sounds like a very smart person's wishful thinking being imprinted onto a film.
Wow. No, that was like a backhanded slap right there.
No, James, listen.
I love you, James.
No, but listen to me. I do think I think it feels like that's something that people, if they're really like looking for it, or they enjoy, if this is the speed of the type of movie that is your cup of tea, like it seems like Shahir and James and people that really like this movie, I think you can sort of do that's the natural sort of inference that it would go to with someone who thinks headily and I mean intellectually about film, whereas I didn't see those things, the flaws that I brought up, and we won't go into it again, but like the flaws that I brought up of the movie overpowered it for me. And it wasn't so much that I wanted a bad guy. I know I went back and I listened to it, and we did talk about that for a minute. It just didn't land for me. And I'm glad James liked the podcast, and I'm sorry if that what I just said came off as a backhanded thing. I didn't mean it to be. I think
James, write us back.
Yeah, write us back. Be like, fuck Matt, that piece of shit. No, I think, hey, everyone, I'm glad people like movies, and I'm glad that we can argue about them. And I would happily, on another day, start arguing about Spotlight again. My brain is too dead right now. But thank you, James, for writing in.
Yeah, and for anyone else listening, please write us in your thoughts on Hail Caesar or any film we've done so far at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. We also have a Facebook page, which we check in on every now and again.
Stop saying we don't check the Facebook page here. You act like it's like this dead thing that we don't like ever go to. I look at it.
I post on there. We write stuff. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. Robin, where can people find you?
My Instagram, if you want to see pictures of my three-legged dog,
Yep.
are at Robin L. Foster, ROBINLFOSTER. And Twitter, I believe it's Fosterchild R _
Wow, you scored big. You could sell that Twitter handle.
Nope.
_ 32.
Oh, no, you can't.
Killed it.
After the 31 other people.
Fosterchild R was already taken.
Yep.
Damn it.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. Shahir?
As always, you can see my work and get access to my Twitter and Facebook. Well, not get access, but you can
You can hack Shahir's Twitter.
Listen, if you email us in, I'll give you access to my Twitter account for a day, and you can write my 400 fans.
Wow.
But
I think I'm going to write in.
ShahirDaud.com. That's ShahirDaud.com. We've got a very exciting music video, which we'll be launching in the next couple of months with robots.
Nice. You can find me at Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, Emperor MSK on Twitter, or at www.mattthewkrol.com for all of my life and works. Guys, this has been the only podcast about Hail Caesar. Robin, thank you so much, darling, for coming on
Thanks
again.
so much for having me.
Thanks,
My old-time Hollywood girlfriend.
You just spent your Valentine's Day with 2 dudes in a room.
Yeah.
How was it?
Wouldn't spend it any other way.
Aww.